Hi, everyone. Welcome to the UFOhub Webcast. Today's guest is going to be Lisa O'Hara. She's the author of the book Abducted and Furious: How I Fought Back and How You Can Too. And as always, I'm going to let the guests get into their background information. So let's get to it. Hi, Lisa. Welcome. Thanks for being on.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad that we're able to make it today because earlier today I had to text you regarding the storm and we had a power outage and I wasn't sure if we were going to have it, but thankfully everything worked out great. So, now you're here. So I figured, why don't you start out with a little bit of background about yourself?
I lived in California for quite a few years and moved around a lot as a child, every year or 2 years. And I moved to Arizona 10 years ago. And although I've always had some strange experiences I couldn't explain or label, it wasn't until I moved to Arizona that I began recently figured out that I'm abducted by aliens every night.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. So can you maybe go a little bit into that about how you found out?
Sure. Because I was constantly having these unusual experiences, I guess I'm going to be 60 soon. So 10 years ago, I was almost 50, and I started, trying to label what I was. Like, am I a psychic? I mean, what are these weird experiences in my past? And so I started, trying to label it. I started reading books and trying to figure out if I was an intuitive or a psychic or a medium. And I read a book called How to Tell If You're a Medium. And I thought, well, I mean, it was sort of vague. It sort of seemed like it was kind of like a horoscope where you feel like it can fit you, but not really. And, so I thought, well, this could be true, but it could not also not be true. I mean, it's kind of vague. And so I thought, I'm not married to be a medium if that's not true, because I didn't want to, have the ego thing of, oh, here, finally, I found it, and as soon as I started saying that, I heard knocking on the wall. And I thought, that's strange. I mean, it's not my imagination. I can hear this knocking. So I started meditating quite a bit. And then I asked my spirit guides, what my purpose was on this earth. And they said to be a beacon of light. Now, I didn't know what that meant at the time. Eventually I figured out that it means like showing the way. But at the time I just thought that is really cryptic. I have no idea what that means. I'm just going to continue, on my merry way. Then later, they were telling me, I started getting messages from ghosts. And one of them was from my mother, and she made me go through very specific things to tell my sister some very important message. And it kept happening like that. So I thought, well, maybe I'm a medium, and I just didn't know it all this time. So I started looking for a medium mentor or teacher, and it took a long time. I finally found one in 2016, and I said, okay. I went there to talk to my mother at the time, who had passed in 2014. And I told her, I really want to talk to my mother. And she said, well, you could talk to her anytime you want. You're just like me. You're a medium. So that's how I found that out. So I started working with her to become a medium, a practicing medium, and went through that for, I'd say about 6 months. But I got to a point where I don't know if anyone else can understand this, but there are times when you say, oh, I'm going to go try to do this as my job. And you go and go and go. And then at some point, there's some sort of a loss of momentum. And you think to yourself, you know what, this just doesn't feel right anymore. It doesn't feel like I'm really going in that direction. At first, I could see myself in this position, but now it's sort of like fading. I mean, I don't know where I'm going, but it's not this place. So my medium at the time did say, you're at a crossroads right now. So you can be a medium or you can learn more. And I thought, well, I want to do more because I don't see myself in this position anymore. So I'm still meditating. And one night I'm in bed meditating, because a lot of times I would meditate to go to sleep. And I felt this incredibly negative presence in my room. And it was, just dark and menacing, and it just didn't feel good at all. And so I asked my spirit guide, and I found out his name was Korig. Korig, what is that feeling? Just what is that? And he said, oh, it's the Greys. They're here to take you. They took all your eggs, and that's why you don't have children. And I thought, what? I mean, I always felt sorry for people who were taken by aliens. And here I am finding out that I am also being taken by aliens. And it was very, very jarring and horrible. And I just felt, like the bottom of my world fell out from under me. And I didn't feel safe. And I just felt like it was horrifying and terrifying. At that point, I just felt freaked out, basically. I did eventually tell my husband. He said, that's not true. That's impossible. He's very sciencey, and he's an engineer. And so I actually felt better, because I felt like, yeah, he's right. That can't be true. That doesn't sound right. And so it kind of gave me that feeling of, I can get used to this a little at a time. I don't have to get used to this all at once, So that continued for a while, with me starting to notice, after I got over my freak out, and just kind of got used to the idea. I started thinking, I'm really mad. I don't like this. It's helpless. It's, tortured. Most people can't talk about this. And I didn't want this to happen anymore. I wanted out. So while I was still with the medium at that time, I started telling her about this, and she started helping me try to get out of it. She was of the opinion that we had contracts before we were born here on this earth, and that we chose these experiences to learn lessons. And I didn't think that sounded like me. I can't imagine choosing this. But I thought, well, I'm just going to go with it. So we tried everything. We tried deleting Akashic records. We tried breaking the contracts. We tried healings. We tried demanding our right to sovereignty and free will. I had a piece of paper I kept in one of those plastic protectors that I could read every night. My husband called it my manifesto. So I would read it out loud and demand my right to free will. I would say, no, I'm not going. We tried everything, like I said. But while this was happening, I was also searching madly and frantically on the web for what things other people had done. And, I found a couple of websites. They showed the tools that people used for abduction, what they had seen, what they hadn't seen. While this was happening, I started feeling like, you know what, I can turn this around. I mean, I can be fearful, and and at that time I was still very fearful. But one of the things I should do is I should start looking for clues. I should flip the script. I mean, instead of me being their guinea pig, they could be my guinea pig to a degree. So I started noticing things. One of the things I noticed was that my clothes had this funky smell at certain days. And no matter what I did, if I left it on my counter in the bathroom, it would smell. And then there would be times when it would be in the laundry room and it would smell. And I thought for a while that I wasn't putting in laundry detergent correctly, or not enough, or whatever. So I tried different experiments trying to see if I could figure out where the smell was coming from. And so I took them out of the dryer right away and hung them up in my closet. I mean, it took an absurdly long time, but I finally realized that the reason that the clothes smelled, and they smelled like BO and feet all the time, was because those were the clothes I put on when I left. And so I realized that was a huge clue. And if I smelled my clothes every morning, I would know if I'd left. Sometimes it's, mostly smelled like BO and feet, like it had been in the dirty clothes hamper for too long, or if that was the environment, that I was in when I was wearing those clothes, it was affecting my clothes. So after that, when I made that discovery, that was pretty huge for me. I had been writing down all my dreams, and I added that to it. So then I started sort of obsessively and methodically looking at everything. So before I went to sleep, I would find that I would feel like I was getting hit by a dart or a mosquito, like a mosquito biting you. And I realized that that was the tool they used to make me fall asleep right away. Because a lot of times I could not stay awake for very long after hitting one of those sleep darts. Unless I really, really tried really hard, I could stay awake, and then they'd hit me again with another sleep dart. So, and if they hit me too many times, I would stay awake a really long time, maybe 3 hours, and then finally I would fall asleep. So I just started, noticing all these things. I started noticing that, sometimes I would hear things. Sometimes I would see things against my windows. So I just wrote everything down. If planes went over my house, at strange times, I wrote that down. One of the things I noticed with the 6th and the 7th of the month, every month, no matter where I was, even if I left town, these things, I would hear the low-flying planes, and then I would be taken. And I'd hear helicopters, a lot of helicopters. So at that point, I just started writing everything down, and I started writing down my dreams. Now, one of the things that was really important was I also read everyone else's accounts, because I felt like there were nuggets of information in all these other people's accounts that I could use in my situation. So one of the things I read was Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. And one of the things he talked about, which I thought was really fascinating, because, of course, my memory is wiped every time. And that's one of the problems. That's why people, can't tell their story, because they don't remember anything. And, that's a problem. So one of the things I read in Whitley Strieber's book was about screen memories. And that is a thing that you hear about when you hear about hypnotic regression. But in my case, I was realizing that there was a way that I could get behind the screen memory, because the screen memory is actually created by us, our bodies. Our brains create it for us, and it's to help us get through whatever trauma we've been going through. But instead of making it about trauma, it makes it about something common, like if you've lost your purse or your wallet and you're stressed. I found that if I had a stress dream, that meant there was some trauma behind the dream. And so I was really happy to find that information, because that meant I could find out what went on behind the dream that I had that was a screen memory and before the memory wipe. So in the meantime, and of course this story is not linear, kind of goes all over the place. But while I was still with my medium at that time, I was studying healing. And so I was learning angelic healing and all kinds of healing. And since I'm kind of a type A personality, kind of an all-in, I started buying books on healing, because thinking, if I get more experiences healing, who knows where I can go? I can go in this direction, that direction. And on Amazon, I came across a book by Stuart Swerdlow. And he wrote about, a healing handbook. I read it, it was a little bit kind of esoteric. But I bought all of his books that mentioned healing. And one of them was called Healing Archetypes and Symbols. And actually, I have it right here. This is it. And so I bought it. And first I read it, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is way over my head. I don't think I'll ever figure this out. And I also found this one called the Hyperspace Helper. And so I read both of these, and I thought, well, this is so over my head. I'm just going to have to wait until I figure this out a little bit more. But at the same time, I was, dealing with these ET situations. And, so I needed something. But at that time, it was just too much for me. But then I actually saw a couple of ET. And here's the story. So I got a cut on my, we have tall recycling bins in Arizona. I was walking backwards and I fell over something and I got a cut on the top of my right knee. And so I, it throbbed, cuts are, if they're thick, if they're deep, they throb for a while. So mine was throbbing, and then eventually I went to bed, it stopped throbbing, and then it started throbbing while I was in bed. And I thought that was so strange. But I looked up and there was a praying mantis next to my bed begging me to let her take me to my ship, her ship, and saying, please let me fix your leg. And she was doing this telepathically, and she was very tall and she was greenish. And I was just kind of mesmerized by it because I really never expected to see a praying mantis next to my bed. And of all the things I had ever heard about abduction, I had never heard of any praying mantises. I had only heard of greys. So at that time, I kind of felt weird. I mean, I didn't feel like I couldn't move like some people do. I just felt so fascinated. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it. And I didn't want to move because I wanted to continue staring at it. But I was concerned because while she gave off this kind of motherly figure, she wanted to take me to her ship, and I was violently opposed to that. So I kept saying, no, I'm sorry, I can't go, I'm not going to go. And she was saying, well, what if the bad guys get you? Will you let me take you then? It's like, well, I think I said yes, and then I fell asleep. And also I had another, which I felt like was a male figure, another praying mantis, come into my room. He used either a spoon or a tuning fork, which really hurt, and smacked me on my lady parts. And then he just pointed at me and I fell asleep immediately. So having those two things, after a while, I was extremely motivated to find out what was happening to me before the memory wipe. So I kept asking my spirit guides to please help me find a solution to this, because I had searched in vain, and I had also, my medium we tried everything and nothing worked, and I was just getting really desperate. They pointed me back to those healing books that I found so esoteric the year before. And it turns out that they were very, very helpful. One of the things, I did everything by trial and error. So that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, to save everyone else from having to do it too. If you want that. But if you don't, then that's up to you. But I started reading the Hyperspace Helper, which I showed you earlier, and they have some exercises in it. One of the exercises is called the Green Spiral Staircase. And basically what you do is you have your dream, your scream memory in your mind as you walk down this green spiral staircase. At the end of the staircase, when you feel compelled to step off, a screen will be in front of you, and you'll be watching yourself as if you're in a movie. You're not experiencing it. You're not looking at it through your own eyes. You're actually watching yourself go through things. And you might see all kinds of crazy things. Then you write it all down, and then you have a better idea of what's happening to you every night. So that's why when you get up, make sure you write down all your dreams as quickly as possible, because your dreams are kind of like smoke and they'll disappear right away, or sometimes I'll lay back down on my bed and I'll be able to remember parts of it, but the intricate details I can't remember. Or, if I have 6 dreams, I try to get them all down. The other book, Healing Archetype and Symbols, had a couple of things in it called the Brown X, which is when you brown X out all unnecessary negativity in your life, and also the Ultimate Protection, where you put on protection for yourself. Anyway, I started using this and using the Green Spiral Staircase, going through this, trial and error, trying to figure out what would work for me. And when I used the Green Spiral Staircase, I would use the Brown X to brown X out all unnecessary negativity in my life. And anything negative that I saw, I brown X'd it out. And so I did that over and over, and I started seeing a pattern. I started seeing that things started disappearing. It felt like the same ETs weren't showing up in my screen memories or behind them. And so I continued, and my medium kept saying, I don't think you're doing something right. I think you need to go back and start over and work harder and that kind of thing. But I felt like but I went to one of her angelic message nights, and she said that the angels said that I was leveling the playing field. And so I decided to, continue because it was really working for me and I could really see a difference. Now, one of the things I would see, for instance, I did see some ships, but not much. You'd see a room. I sometimes saw like these bluish energy looking beings that didn't have an outline, but were people shaped. And sometimes they'd help me. They'd pull stuff out of my body. Other times I saw spiders. I saw tons of spiders, spiders in people suits. I saw very large hairy spiders and white spiders with no hair and a lot of beetles. And it was just very buggy, which I was sort of surprised. But they were also, putting me in big water tanks and drowning me or pumping me full of fluid. So I saw a lot of interesting things. I also saw, like some sort of cross-cloning, like a cat with the spider legs, but a cat head and stuff like that. So all of this was going on. I then went back to my medium and said, let's get together and, use these tools to, get together and help other abductees, because I found these tools, they really worked, and she didn't really want to because I think she just wanted to be the teacher and not the, not the student. I'm not really sure. But anyway, so I wrote this book because I wanted to give the tools that I found, tell everyone about the Stuart Swerdlow tools, and then sort of have a handbook of the things that like a map that you can use that I did, or you can create your own. You don't need to have my map, but it's sort of like a handbook to sort through the situations. In the back of the book, or in the sort of after the middle, I have my journal, and I write down everything. Now I call this, I call the green spiral staircase basically a remote view of your own mind, because you're looking at your dreams and your memories and your, everything else, and you're looking at it in a different way. And so that's what I call a remote viewing your own mind. Some people that I've talked to on different podcasts, I've challenged them to try the green spiral staircase for different things. One of the things is anxiety, because I found that I'm a procrastinator sometimes, and I found out that it was related to anxiety. And I never thought of myself as an anxious person, but I do have some quirky things that I do. But procrastination is one of them. And I thought, this would be a really great way of learning, figuring out what is behind. If you can find out what's behind your dreams, you can also find out what's behind your phobias, your anxieties. So I have to say that after drilling down from procrastination and find out that it's anxiety related, and then finding out behind that, because keep looking behind, it was related to fear of failure. And, after a while, you just get to nothing, and then that feeling is gone. So that's one thing I found. The same with claustrophobia. I've gone to, figured out that I was claustrophobic after the age of 40, and I couldn't figure out why. I mean, it didn't make sense to me. So, again, I drilled down, looking at all these things using the green spiral staircase to look at what was behind my claustrophobia. And I found out it was fear, and then it was darkness, and then it was a black box. I mean, it was all these different things. And as soon as I got to the end, now I'm not claustrophobic anymore. So I think this is a very, very useful thing, not just for ETs, but why not? If you want to use it that way. And this book, The Healing Archetype and Symbols, has quite a few other things in it, and I highly recommend everybody use them as much as possible. At the end, one of the times I did go to, I talked to someone at MUFON, and they told me about this experiencer group that they have through MUFON, and I went to it, and I got to be with my people. Because you know what? This is a very lonely and isolating thing to have happen. It's scary. Everybody has different stories, and it's really hard. It's really hard to figure out where everything fits in. And so it's good to have a support group, because you can't really talk about this with regular people. When they find out, or if you mention it in passing or whatever, you can just sort of feel them slowly move away from you. And so it's really hard to talk about. I think it's the last taboo subject. So everyone should join groups. There's a group called the Opus Network, and it's for people like us to, be along and tell each other our crazy stories, and not be judged. Also, I was reading Terry Lovelace's book, and this is how I even came to write a book. I was reading his book, or I went to an experiencer meeting, and they talked about him. And I'd never heard of him before, but I thought, wow, that's really interesting. So I read his book, and while I was reading his book, I kept seeing ghosts walking around my house. But I felt compelled to write to him. And I wrote to him and said, I'm so proud of you. You're so brave, and to tell your story and to write a book about it. And he encouraged me to write my book. And so, at first I just felt extremely like, what? Wow, what would I do? How would I write this down? And then I did, obviously, but I did the whole writer thing where you get to the eighth page and you go, what now? But I highly recommend people write their books and tell their stories, because now that the media has finally caught on to the fact that ETs are real and so are UFOs, it's really important that everybody who has an experience like this, feels more comfortable to tell their story. I know it's hard. It's going to be easier and easier, but it's really, really important. And I told my story because I wanted to help other people, and I wanted to find other people like me. Because one of the things I found is that there are lots of contactees who enjoy being taken, but I cannot find other people like me who are not enjoying it and want it to stop. And I know you're out there, but I just haven't been able to find you. I've tried multiple ways, and that's one of the reasons I wrote the book. Not to make money, but to spread information, because this is an important subject. And it's important the people that don't want it to happen to them, can get some relief and also become less desirable to the ETs. And I think that's what I've done. So.
I always encourage people that, write books, because it helps to gather all your thoughts in some form and organized way, so that now it can be conveyed to somebody else,
Right.
And what better way to do that than a book? It's just unfortunate that, first people's minds immediately jump to, oh, profit. It's like, no, it's not. It's like we can sit here, tell stories and go back and forth and, jump all over the place, but a book is better organized,
Yes.
and that's the way I've always looked at it, and I'm sure everyone else has the right to look at it the other way, but that's not the point of this conversation now. But I wanted to ask you specifically about your screen memories. What particular things do you remember occurring that were screen memories, and what were you able to kind of, I guess, dissolve? Would that be the right word? To where you see past it and see what was actually going on?
Well, what you do when you use the green spiral staircase, you actually have, sorry, I guess I forgot this in my steps. but you actually have the screen memory in mind as you go down the stairway. And then when you get to the step that you step off of, there's a screen there that shows you what was happening behind it. And so that's how you know. And then you write all that down. While you're there, if you see a lot of negativity, like I saw, I was usually in an operating room. Then I would use the brown X tool to brown X that out. And you can say it or you can use the brown X, either way. But it's a specific color because Steven Swerdlow is very big on certain colors. So, you put a medium green color around your body in order to help you remember. And so it's a medium brown X, medium color. And so you're basically removing all unnecessary negativity. And so when you do that, then it helps you, kind of not erase, but remove that from your experience. And unfortunately, there are so many ETs and ET groups. One of the groups kept poking me in the eye. And I actually didn't even talk about that in the book, except that it did happen. But that's a group that's really scary. And I couldn't talk about it in the book because they're always poking me in the eye, and I didn't appreciate that. So I thought, if I talk about this, who knows what they'll do to me? So I was too nervous to write about it. Even though I did sneak some aspects of them inside the book, here and there, whenever I felt like it was safe. So basically, you just keep doing that and doing that. And basically what's happening is you're piecing together all of your little stories. And eventually a picture emerges. So like for me, I was constantly in operating rooms. I was, they would have my eyeballs out on a table and they were doing things to it. Sometimes they'd cut me down the middle. There were quite a few scenes of me being, having my eggs, having them maturing me, and then having my eggs removed, and then regressing me back to a certain age. I'm not sure what all of these things are completely about, but you just kind of get a better idea of what they're doing while you're not conscious of it. And so, or, if they knock you out, then you'll see the knockout, but then you might also see, what other things happened. So it's just a way of determining this huge puzzle of what in the heck is happening to me when I leave, and do I get up and leave? Do I, how do they get me out of the bed? And sometimes you might not be able to figure that out right away. I was, after a while, realizing that it was some sort of programming tool. Which may sound far-fetched, but it seems to me that, there's some sort of hypnosis used. And so, some code word or a tone or a sound, causes me to get up and leave and put on clothes and leave. So, these kind of things will just help you sort out these questions you have about yourself, what's really going on, and so that eventually you'll have some sort of story. And I think that's very useful for people who are really curious and really want to know. But the important thing about the green spiral staircase, which I think is important for people to know now, is it gives you the gist. Not every gory detail, not too long. It'll just show you the gist of what you need to know right now. And I think that's very helpful. You don't want to relive it or anything. You just want to know the important parts and then move on. So,
well, Lisa, if it's not too troubling, would it be possible for you to recall some of the events that you had? And if not, I understand. While you were, abducted during specific times.
Sure. Let's see. Well, I found that a lot of times I went to Antarctica, and I would be underwater. So there would be an underwater building or something like that. And I recall I would call it jelly filled. It was sort of like, I don't know, sort of like a thick bubble or kind of jelly-like kind of operating room. And that's where I'd be. And it would be, the operating room was institution green and everybody was wearing green scrubs with white masks on. So a lot of times I couldn't see the faces. or the faces would just not be available to me. And I didn't know how they did that. I do think they did it through hypnosis. I would have a situation where I'd be a little girl and there would be an operating room and then a classroom right next to each other. And it was like there were, teaching children certain things or trying to get some sort of response out of them. And one of the little kids said, just go someplace else. Don't be here, And so, I don't really know exactly what that means, but I felt like it was extremely stressful and fearful. There would be tons of dream or screen memories. With behind the screen memory, there would be tons of scenes where I'd be in this underground. I called it a torture cave. It was a torture cave, and it had buildings like barracks, and they were brown, and they would have brown hallways. Everything was brown, kind of a medium brown or a darkish brown. So we'd have like thin bunks with, I'd be with other little kids, and we would just be basically tortured or not treated well. I actually have, and I'm still trying to figure out where these came from and what that means, but I actually have indentations in the back of my head. And I did see once where I was being drilled in the head with a drill and like a hole being poked in my head. And so, that kind of explains the indentations. I'm not sure if that's exactly what happened, or maybe that was just part of my little kid mind. But I do have pretty deep indentations in the back of my head, and my hair covers them, so nobody can ever see them, But I also, I never had children, and so I don't know if that's why. I didn't have the ticking clock. I didn't have, that urge to have children, and I always wondered why. Because, when you're in your 30s and everybody's getting married, having children, you think to yourself, why don't I feel like that, And I didn't think I was weird, but I just found it odd that it didn't happen that way, and it's probably because I didn't have any eggs anymore. So that was it. I also, like I said, I was put under, had lots of surgeries on my eyes, and they seemed to in particular interest to my eyes. And they also would put me into big aquarium tanks to see if I could breathe underwater. And I also saw a couple of myselves. So in other words, I would see my own self and another self that had gills. And so as if they were creating clones with gills, like they had monkeyed with some of the DNA. And just stuff like that. I mean, tons of stuff like that where I just couldn't, I couldn't believe it. But then also all these bugs, plus a lot of people. Like one of the screen memories I would look behind showed me in a hangar, a huge hangar, like an airplane hangar, and there were beds everywhere. And I was being attended to by people. And, I didn't get to see a lot of that. Or as me as a baby in a cage, an electrified cage. So, and I also saw a lot of cages. One of the things I saw was that there was these huge ships, and it was just filled to the gills with people in cages, and they're moaning and crying and, just in pain and in anguish. A lot of times it seems like they take the babies and do something to them and then maybe bring them back. Just stuff like that. It's just, some of it is just pretty horrifying. But, as a time goes by, you kind of get kind of desensitized a little bit to it because you're trying to figure out your own situation, and your mind just gives you, like I said, not the horrible anguish and crying and all that and the pain, but it shows you what's actually happening to you. And that's really important because you get to figure out the puzzle of your life. And it makes you rethink everything too, because, I didn't know about this whole egg business before, but it's like, yeah, that kind of makes sense now, Um, And the same with, almost everything. When I was in my 30s, I got a divorce and I was living alone and I was working two jobs. And one of the things that would happen to me, I'd have these horrible dreams where I was like sleepwalking. And I don't remember the dream at all. I just remember a black rectangle. And that's what one of the common themes in my life is, that whenever I had a memory wipe, I had a black rectangle. That was I guess, the way my brain associated a memory wipe with it. So when I was in my 30s, I'd find myself running down my hallway. I would find myself peering into my closet, sort of crouched on the side of my bed. I sometimes talking to people that were in my closet and just weird stuff like that. And so it makes, now that I know this, I can say, that's probably what was happening. I did actually eventually look at using the green spiral staircase as at the black rectangle. And I found out it had trigger words of fear and learning. So I don't know if that reinforced, fear, the word fear reinforced the memory wipe or not. I'm not really sure. And I want to tell you that I don't have all the answers. I'm looking at my own self. I'm trying to discover what's happening to me. And, but that doesn't mean that's happening to you. We're all just looking for the answers. And I'm still fighting my, ETs. I'm really close, I think, to being finished. And, so I do know this works. So I urge everyone in this position to try it, because you have nothing to lose. I tried everything else, and this is what I found that works. And, feel free to try everything else too. Maybe something else will work for you. If it doesn't, make sure you try this, because it does really work. One other thing is that when I was 28, I was married to this other guy. And I found that I would sit up screaming if he walked into our room and I had gone to bed first. As soon as he walked in, I would sit up and start screaming like somebody was killing me. And I think that was my reaction to being, taken by ETs. And so I did, and that's when I started having the black rectangle. And I tried to find out what it was through therapy, and we couldn't figure it out. And so, but I know now it was ETs. So it's been happening for a very long time. It's just that I've just been awakened to it. So any of you who don't think you're being taken by ETs, I hope you aren't. But you can find out by using these tools I found by Stuart Swerdlow. I did not create them, but I don't think he was using these things for ETs, but that's what I'm using it for, and it really works. So I urge you all to try it.
So, Lisa, I have several questions, actually. So I'm trying to figure out, just so that I can get them off my chest, if I could just get like shorter answers back, okay. and then I'll allow you to I guess, please expound on any of them in any length that you need to. I just want to get off my chest. I don't have a pad to write it down. Forget. So, okay, right. So the first one would be, so when you were younger, it was mainly different operations that were obviously disturbing to you, but then it was when you got older that they then started harvesting eggs. Is that what you're saying?
I believe so.
Okay. And so then the other one was, so the different events happening, you're saying sometimes they were praying mantises, sometimes they're grays, and then you said sometimes actual humans when you say people?
Yes.
Okay, I see. So do you believe it could be maybe some kind of military thing? Because I don't know how familiar you are with this. A lot of people talk that the military also has their hands in this whole abduction scenario, and sometimes they're a lot more sloppier than the aliens are.
Yes, that's true. Okay. Yes. With my childhood, I think that I'm not really sure, because I had really unusual experiences, which I couldn't really label. Like I would have this white, once when I was 10 or 11, I had a white circle that looked kind of like a flashlight with a piece of white paper put in front of it. So it didn't, no torch came through it, no light came through it. It was just a white glowing circle. And I had that in my bed when I was 11, and I started screaming, "Oh no, oh no." Now, my conscious mind did not know what that meant, but some other part of my mind did, and it was fear. It was fear-based. I believe that my eggs were taken when I was younger, but I was age regressed to an older age so that they were mature or whatever. And then the eggs were taken, or one by one they were taken, and then I was regressed back to like age 7. I'm not, this is just like, it's not a complete exact science. So this is what I believe. But it's possible that they just waited until they were mature and then took them all. I don't know. It's kind of frustrating because you don't know why they think the way they think. I mean, did they just use one and then, clone it a couple of times? I don't know. I don't know what they did with them. Although when I lived in California, because I lived there the longest from when I was 13 until I was 49, one of the things that kept happening to me pretty regularly, like 4 times a month for a really long time, I'd say 20 years, people would come up to me and say, "Hey, you know what? You look just like my sister's boyfriend's mother," stuff like that. That happened to me 4 times a month, every month. And it happened so often that I just really got used to it. But when I moved to Arizona, never happens. So I wondered then for a long time if it was I had clones, and they're in California, but they're not here. So what was your other question? What was one of your other questions?
But the other one was, well, I kind of mentioned, you said that just to clarify, when you said people, that you meant humans, but then I want to just expand on that a little bit more. Do you think then was there any information that you perceived that they were working together with these different alien races, or what was your impression?
Yes, I do. Yes, all of them were working together, especially the ones in Antarctica seem to be working very closely. There is, it seems like a reptilian race working with other military people. I saw a lot of insignias. One of them was like a Leo symbol and with a line under it. I also saw,
and this is on the humans that you saw. Do you mean the humans are carrying this insignia? Any insignia on the aliens themselves?
Yes, both. So it was like they were all wearing the same insignia. But also I found, you're right, I think that I was reading, what was it called? My Labs. Yeah, that's another book, because I read all the books as much as I can. They were because one of the things I kept finding happening was that my tooth, I brush my teeth at night and I wear a night guard so I don't grind my teeth, and I kept finding plaque on my teeth the next day. And I couldn't figure out why that was happening. And it turns out, I think it was because I was being made to drink or eat something. And it's my understanding that that's one of the MOs of the military guys. Sometimes they give you drugs, but sometimes they make you eat something. And it could be because I refuse. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I kept finding plaque over and over. And so I also think that they were, poking me with, shooting me with some sort of syringe over and over. And so I'd find these marks on my body and I wouldn't know where they came from, bruising and all kinds of things, I don't know if I sent you pictures, but I can send it after the show. But
oh yes, please, because this will be actually a perfect example to do that. And yeah, I apologize, I forgot to email you back. That would be perfect during this time while I'm editing. I can add the pictures in. So
okay, sure. So yeah, there were a lot of really, really weird things. I mean, some of them look like a stamp. I kept finding marks on my body that at first I thought were spider bites, but because it was it looked like 2 bites, like spiders are, but it wasn't. I finally determined that it was like a stun gun mark or a cattle prod. That's what it was. And so a lot of times I have syringe marks. I'll have a giant bruise with 5 syringe marks, it looks like. And so I'm not really sure what kind of a tool is used to create those. But yeah, I do believe that I was kept being taken after I was taken by the ETs. I was maybe multiple times. Then I was taken by people, by military people, and they are very rough, very obnoxious. And I remember telling one of them, he was like, "You know more. You're just not telling me," you know. And I said to him, "Don't you remember about the memory wipe? You know, get a clue."
You
And
mean one of the people that was abducting you?
yes, one of the military people wanted to know what I know. You know more than you're saying, and probably drugged me or gave me truth serum. But I had to tell him, don't forget about the memory wipe, because you need to get a clue. We can't remember because they make sure we can't remember. So anyway, that didn't endear me to him, and I probably suffered either from drugs or whatever. So yeah, I do think that there are people working with certain groups, and especially in Antarctica, I think there are multiple people working with the ET groups. There must be, Antarctica is like the last frontier, right? Because it's finally starting to melt a little. And I think that there's tons of things going on there that we don't even know about. So that's where they were working with, I think, the Draco, or the reptilian race. But they also had a lot of spiders and a lot of, other things. Beetles and spiders is mostly what I would see. Luckily, I'm not afraid of spiders, but
Now, when you say a lot of spiders, or I said insectoids in general, so are you saying there would be like the size of a human body, or the human size, or were they smaller? Or what I'm saying is, can you clarify? Are they like more intelligent, to where they're doing some kind of task, or you mean they're just insects on the walls?
no, I mean that they're actually physically doing things to me, and they're larger and intelligent. Yeah, so the insectoids, I guess, as you would call them. Yeah, the praying mantis, beetles. They're standing on two legs. Sometimes they have wings, and other times it's just very large spiders. Sometimes they actually act like they're talking. They put one of the scenes I saw was they put on a people suit, as I call it, sort of like a zip up people suit, and that way they could pretend to be a person. And then also try to move their mouth to pretend like they were talking to me when they were really using telepathy. So that's a couple of things that I saw, and I imagine I was very frightened at the time. But yeah, I think there's so many people that are involved in this, actual humans. And then there's the other, insectoids or whatever, and the reptilians. So I do think that they're all involved. And I don't think that people realize that, it's a combination. And I don't know if they're trying to create something, or if they're like, I've heard of super soldiers and stuff like that, or if they're just doing everything experimentation. Because there was a lot of talk about Nazi scientists going to Antarctica and just doing heinous experiments on people, on humans. And so I think that there is some of that going on, because it doesn't make sense, all of the other stuff about, oh, they're just learning about us. They're trying to help our race. The Greys are, like little robots, So, how long do you need to do this? I'm almost 60, and I don't think I need to continuously be experimented on. I mean, what more do you need of my body, right? So I just think that there's nothing is as it seems. And that's what my spirit guides told me. Nothing is as it seems. So I'm, still trying to figure out, what are they really doing? I mean, this is what I've seen, but what's really behind all that? So
Right. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, because that must be very difficult, trying to have a life, and then having to deal with all these things that you can't really exactly go to, your next door neighbor, like, hey, can I talk to you? Probably a close friend, but so what I apologize if I keep going back to to
No
these
problem.
certain questions, because I just want to get more clarification or information, because I find it interesting regarding so obviously you're not gonna, while you're going through what you're going through, you're not gonna be so analytical about things about, oh, well, where are you from? I wonder which branch you are, and things like that. But by whatever circumstance, did you ever come across some information that told you, were they Americans? Were they, some kind of just off group that doesn't necessarily belong to any particular country, when it comes to the human part?
That's an interesting question. No, I didn't. I mean, sometimes I would hear that they sounded like Americans and, spoke English flawlessly, but that doesn't mean they're Americans. It could be anybody who doesn't have an accent from where they're from or anything. I didn't really see that. I saw mostly it seemed like I saw insects or I saw white doctors, white humans. And but some of the doctors weren't human. They were, there was one that looked kind of like a stork, but it was standing up, but it was some sort of bug. It's funny. I mostly saw men, and I didn't see a lot of women. So that's one thing. Even the reptilians, the shapeshifters, they would shift from, reptilian to, a man. So I don't know.
Oh, wow. So, oh, no, that's really interesting, because there's so much there. It's like you don't even know where to start. Because so basically, they're just, the whole bottom line is, take you for whatever purposes that they feel or deem necessary, and then bring you back. And sometimes, I mean, every single time with the screen memory, or did they sometimes slip up and you remembered more?
I have remembered more, but most of the time it's completely black. Since they know I'm doing this, now they, maybe do an extra step and make it completely black. But yeah, there are times when I've woken up just as something was happening. Like, for instance, I heard recently, this is in the book, you can wake up now, Lisa, in this weird, woman's voice. And so that made me wonder if that was a hypnotic, suggestion that when you hear my voice saying, you can wake up now, Lisa, then you wake up. So yeah, I've been in the state of between awake and asleep, and sometimes I'll get some more information. And of course, I wrote it all down because that's the only way you can, really, if you don't, you won't remember it. But if you do, then it's just another piece of the puzzle that you didn't have before. So yeah, I have gotten some information. One of the dreams I had, which was really strange, but this one felt real as opposed to a screen memory, because a lot of the screen memories are actually seem to be stress related. But this was two doctors talking to each other and pointing to something that they were looking at, and they were talking about doing testing on the hippocampus, and that's part of the brain. And so I thought, this is important information. you know this somehow I got this information. Now, it could have been a screen memory, but it made me want to brown X out all unnecessary negativity on the hippocampus, right? Because that is not something I would have thought was happening. So I mean, I think it's really subtle, and unfortunately you have to do your work with your stuff for a while. And I think then you start saying, oh my gosh, that doesn't feel the same as the other stuff. And it might be information. You can also, then look at that also and remote view that too. But, you get as much information as you can work it.
So let me cover some things. So basically, one of this particular locations you remember is Antarctica. The other ones you said, um, underwater,
Correct.
in a more of, you said, was it just a huge bubble, or was it another facility?
It was in Antarctica, in a bubble that was part of another facility.
Okay. And then the other ones was then also in Antarctica, but underground, where you just said it was just everyone just wearing like brown type clothing.
Yeah, I don't know where that one was. I kept seeing actually it being on the moon, but I don't know if it is. It's a very nondescript location, right? It's underground. It it feels really wrong and dark and horrible. So when you go there, you know that you've been tortured there, and so that's what your feeling is whenever I went there, and I call it torture caves. I mean, that's what I call it because that's what it feels like. So that is some sort of underground facility where they actually have a lot of buildings that are all in brown. I mean, it's sort of like you can't distinguish one from the other. One of the things that happened to me early on was that I recognized that there was a long these brown houses or brown barracks or whatever had very very long hallways. And at one point, I even realized and discovered that there was some sort of mylar at the end of one to make it look extra long, but there was something behind it. And so I looked behind it, and there was like an escalator or something, and I could see that I was on the moon. So, these are, but that was only after going to it a couple of, maybe 50 times that I finally said, you know what, there's more to this. There's something funny going on. When I look down the hall, I see weird things, So, but there's also a lot of me running down the halls and trying to find a office to hide in to escape being tortured, so stuff like that. So you got to just look at everything and just hope you can figure it out.
These different insignias, was that the one with you said it was a Leo constellation, and
Yeah.
with a lion underneath as a picture?
No, sorry. It was like the horoscope Leo symbol, and with a one thin line Line underneath.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And so
Yeah.
was that the only one that you've seen, or were they
No,
were there
I've
any
seen
others?
one like VW on its side, on the pointing with the large points going one direction or the other. I can't remember because I haven't seen it in a while. With dots in the V part. So in the VW, there are dots in the VW in the fat part. Does that make sense to you?
Uh, One more time. You said so the VW is to the right of it.
I think I can't remember exactly, but which way it pointed. But I think it was like this. Can you see that?
I will, later on when I edit, I'll try to get it sharpened up or take more of a still from it, and then
Okay.
blow that up maybe. But thanks for drawing that out. That helps. And
Okay,
so,
and then
yeah,
there's
go ahead.
one more. There's actually, um, oh shoot, I'm not good at drawing. I'm taking a drawing class, so that hopefully I can be better at it. There's one that looks kind of like a DNA symbol, and with dots in it. Can you see that?
Yes, yes. If that's perfect shot right there. So is all three different ones, or is it just a
Yes,
combination?
they're
Okay.
all three different ones.
So some people would have some of those, the
Yeah,
others would have the other two. Okay.
right.
Or the other three based on the sheet.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
then there's one more that was like this. It was like a carrot with a line underneath it.
Okay.
So those are the ones I was seeing, but I didn't. I've stopped seeing those, so I don't know if that means that those ones are gone, or if they realized that I was seeing the insignia and that they needed to stop. Make sure they don't have those on. I have more plain clothes when
Right.
they take me. I'm not really sure, but
So Lisa, what do you think? What do you think this all of this is heading to? obviously it's been happening for decades in your case, right? And
Right.
so, what do you think their ultimate goal is? I mean, besides just, what, maybe creating some kind of hybrids on their own, maybe some kind of um, difference interspecies breeding. What are your thoughts?
I actually have had many thoughts. Sometimes I have a theory and then it goes sideways, but and that'll happen. So don't be afraid of that if that happens to you. Um, I think that they have many. It's sort of like many projects going on all at the same time. Sort of like project. I don't know if you heard of some of these, but Project Monarch is one, and they had like 19 or 119 projects underneath it where they were trying out different things. Um, so I think that they have so many projects going on, and it depends. Somebody can be in one program and then another program. So like maybe when I'm being taken, I was being taken 4 times a night. Now I think I'm only being taken twice a night. So theoretically speaking, I could see that I was in different programs. I think I was in the program of learning to breathe underwater program, and I don't know what that would be called, but and I think I was maybe I have implants in both of my eyes, so and they glow and they annoy me, and also people look through them. I can feel like someone's looking through my eyes. So maybe Project Eyeball was another one. You know what I mean? So I think
Right.
it feels like I'm one of multiple programs. And unfortunately, that means that that's probably why that this been going on for so long. Maybe I was under Project Clone, I don't know.
Just listening to all of that, it almost seems like that the humans have somehow gotten hold of some kind of information, or were given some information, some more advanced genetic knowledge about how to do better gene splicing or something. And so they're like, hey, let's go crazy with this.
Yes, I agree. I think that's one of the things. And since the ETs are working with them, I agree. I think they know a lot more than they're saying, and a lot more science and a lot more everything, but they're just not letting it out. One thing I wanted to say, which kind of goes with this, is my husband is very sciencey. And about last year, I was reading a book on North Korea. And I thought, how sad. Those people, they don't know anything. Their information is restricted. And then I realized I was reading that to know that I am also, our I think our information is just as restricted as North Korea's, except that we don't know it. So I think that unfortunately a lot of us UFO people, or the people that are being taken every night, we know all too well that there's a lot more things going on that the general public isn't aware of. And we don't even know what we don't know. There's so much stuff going on.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. I just, it's one of these things. It's easy or enough already by giving people little information to get them confused enough and keep them, I guess, unaware of certain things. But um, how in the world can something like this ever come out in the open? When you think about it, this will really screw with their minds, especially if they're already in this smaller bubble to begin with.
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder too about the whole UFO thing suddenly is, popped up, and they're like, yeah, you're right. We've been lying to you all these years. I hope that gives all of us abductees a little bit more status, because, we've been saying this for years, and we've been, ridiculed and, put in insane asylums and that kind of thing.
And all of
And
that for the benefit for everyone else, but they don't see it that way, because hey, they're not experiencing, so it must be you, and you're the crazy one.
yeah, actually, somebody said to me fairly recently, well, why you? That's like, well, I'm not the only one, there are many of us. So yeah, I'm really interested to see, the US recently had their Space Force, and, what is that really all about? What are they really fearful of? What's about to happen? So I think they had to come out with the UFO stuff being real, because it seems like something's about to happen.
Well, how quickly do you really think this can unravel? Because my thoughts, were that where they are now is where most of us were 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
and I think they can't come out with things that you and I, for example, discussing today. It would
Right.
have to literally be more and more about lights in the sky, and maybe 2 3 years worth of that, and then all of the sudden, there was a sighting of maybe a landing. I don't know, I'm just guessing at this point.
Right.
And then 2 3 years of that, and then finally kind of getting to more and more to where, when you're already 20 30 years into it. Oh, so 60 years ago they were doing this experience, and then they just kind of like, okay, let's move on,
Right. Yeah. I agree with you. I don't know how it's going to unravel, but I feel like they're doing it for as a preemptive strike. Like they're saying, okay, you caught us. We really have all this, and this is why we had the Space Force. And it's sort of like to put the narrative in place first. That's how I see it.
Right. No, I think you're right, because I mean the whole job of government is to always stay in authority. And if you all
Right.
of a sudden are not in authority and it doesn't come through you, not very many people are going to follow what you have to say. So of
Right.
course they want to have this, hey, we told you about this first. We're working on this. You just let us get to this. We'll tell
Right.
you what you need to know. So that very well could be. I mean, I wouldn't get it past them.
I agree, but I
Mhm.
wonder too if all these other unmanned spacecraft or manned, the Tesla and all these different is really the reason that they're having to hurry because they're realizing they can't keep that cap on the information anymore. And like, what if I read a book recently by Ingo Swann about the moon having an alien race on it that has psychic abilities like telepathy. And it was really interesting the way they were showing, all the different pictures of the moon and how we never have any HD photos of the moon. They're all blurry.
Right.
And so when, these people are going up in their spacecraft that are not NASA, how are they going to keep a cap on what's really going on the moon's other side, or
Mm.
whatever?
Right.
So,
Yeah, because that's always been the speculation. What is on the dark side of the moon?
right,
There's sometimes there's rumors of what some astronauts have talked about, but then again, I don't know. It can't be substantiated because again, it's just rumors online. But it's interesting to know. What I always did is when it comes to any kind of information, I would always take it and put it in the back of my mind so that when
right,
I'm actually faced with it one day, then I know, oh, I have something to refer to. And if
right,
and if not, then it was just something I heard that either I never came across that info or it's just not true, you know.
right.
But to just kind of block it out and just say forget about this and just um, label it as weird and cuckoo, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to myself, because wouldn't you want to be more well versed in certain subjects, know more about certain things, than to just say, oh, I don't want to hear about it. That's crazy. Let's move on.
Yeah, well, I really think that a lot of people, especially those who are anti, abductee or whatever, they just don't really either they don't have time in their life for it, or they just don't they really believe all the scientists. And, I think that's unfortunate because their mind isn't open, but they don't know it. They think they are open-minded. So I mean, in a way, I think this whole UFO thing becoming, more the government finally admitting it, I think that that's really helpful for most people, right? Because then they realize that their government didn't tell them this until now, and it's been going on forever. So,
Talking about trust issues.
yeah, exactly. And so I think, unfortunately, I didn't consent to this. I mean, if this was happening to me when I was a little girl and maybe even a baby, I didn't consent to this. And so for the government to be turning a blind eye at it, that doesn't make me feel very trustful of them.
Well, I mean, I was going to say this might be a bit late in the interview, but I guess it's never too late to ask more questions. How was your family aware of what was going on? Well, as you were growing up?
No, because when I would have these strange experiences, I wouldn't, I didn't really know what to call it. And, my parents were, both worked and they just didn't have time for that. And so I actually never talked to anyone about it. Until it was happening to me, and I would stay with my sister at her house. But then I would talk about it because I needed her permission to use her name in my book for one thing. Um, But no, I really didn't talk about it. And some of the things that would happen to me were so sporadic. Like, for instance, at 10, I kept having a daydream that would happen over and over for 7 nights, and then it would come true. And I didn't know what to call that. I mean, it was unusual. And I also thought I was causing it, and then it happened again when I was 16, that same thing. I kept having a daydream that I was moving to a foreign country. And then I didn't want it to happen because I moved every year or every 2 years, and I was about to go into my senior year of high school, and I certainly didn't want that to happen. So I was praying that it wouldn't happen, and then it did. Then I ended up moving to the Philippines. So, those two things, one when I was 10 and one when I was 16, 6 years later, I mean, what do you call that? I mean, I just tucked it away as a thing that I had no idea what was happening. I didn't know what to call it. And occasionally I would have prophetic dreams, that would come true the next day. So these are just isolated, weird incidences that I couldn't even describe very well, especially when you're a little kid, trying to explain what that meant, So I did not.
Right. Did at any point you said you discovered more? Did you say psychic medium later on?
Yes,
Okay.
I did. Did
any of that maybe come in as a handy tool during some of the abductions, or not really?
Not really, because I wasn't, it didn't seem to help me when I needed it. One of the things that I was working with the medium was turning it off and turning it on, kind of like a dial on a radio. And I no, I never used it, but I do think being with aliens helped me with my psychicness, but I don't think my psychicness helped me with, them, for instance.
I see. So, Lisa, is there anything else that you would like to cover or get into that I might not know to ask you?
Let me see. I do have. I just want to say that I wanted to say that I do use something called Lahochi, Lahochi. It is it's a healing modality, and it's actually hands-on healing. I used it after abduction because I found that I would be awake for hours. I don't know if are you an abductee too?
I consider myself a contactee, but not
Oh, okay,
abductee. Yeah,
gotcha.
I got my
Well,
own story, but that's a different
I
show.
know, that's what I think. It's so funny. I wrote a book to meet my people, and I'm meeting them every time I go on a podcast. Um, so it's kind of cool. But so one thing I found was when I was in healing, I took a class, angelic, and I also took Lahochi. And you can go find it at lahochi.com. Basically, it's hands-on healing, and they have hand positions that you can use on your own body. And it really helped me a lot during my abductions or afterwards, because I just would be either wired or couldn't sleep. So I would just use that, and I would put my hands, on my head, or where on all there are 4 different hand positions for self-healing. And it really helped, and I think everyone should do it, just to take care of yourself after an abduction. Meditation really helped me, and one of the things I used was a copper pyramid that I made. And in the book, there is instructions for making a copper pyramid, making your own, and the copper pyramid sort of acts like a funnel for the information to get to you. And it's really helpful. Meditation doesn't have to be about clearing your mind and sitting still and trying to keep those pesky thoughts out of your mind. You can also use guided meditations, and I listed a couple in my book too. That's very, very helpful, and it just helps you feel calm. One other things is that the quicker you can lose your fear of your abductors, the better, because they're using your fear to control you. So that's really key. So I actually don't have any fear anymore, and I don't let them control me. Another thing they seem to do is they want to use your emotions against you. And in that way, they want you to feel the terror, so they want you to be able to be controllable by using like emotional blackmail on you. One of the things they were doing to me not too long ago was they were saying, if you don't do this, I'll kill your husband. And I told them, go ahead, that's his journey. Because I'm not letting them use my emotions, my fears of my husband dying against me to be able to get me to do what they want. That might seem extreme, but he's still here, so don't worry. But it's just a means of control. So if they can, and I think it's sort of good that I don't have children, because I could see that would be a real dilemma for me, as if they said, if you don't do this, I'm going to kill your child. And of course, that's how they can get compliance, is by, threatening your child, So just try to go with it, and don't let them control you with fear, and use all this information against them. I mean, you can figure out what's going on. It takes a little bit of time and work, but you can do it, and you can start Xing them out. And when you do that, there are fewer and fewer. It takes a while. It's not an easy fix, but it's really worthwhile. And if you're motivated, you can get rid of them.
Well, Lisa, thank you very much. For those of you watching, I will have all the links in the description below. But also, Lisa, I would like to maybe go over it. Give me your title of your book, maybe where they can get it, and we'll finish up with that.
Sure. My book is called Abducted and Furious: How I Fought Back and How You Can Too. And it's on Amazon, and it's in Kindle and also book format. That's all the only places it is right now. I have a website, lisaoharaonline.com, and I have a Facebook group and a Facebook page of Abducted and Furious. Abducted and Furious is the Facebook page, and then underneath that is the Facebook group called Abducted and Furious with Lisa O'Hara.
All right. Well, Lisa, thank you very much again. I really appreciate you being on and sharing your story. I know you probably have conquered a lot of your fears, as you mentioned, but I can also see it definitely being difficult to talk about some of these things. So I appreciate you being on and talking about it. And yeah, I hope we can do this again sometime. And again, thank you. And I hope they stop doing what they're doing.
I do too. Believe me, I definitely want it to be over. That's my whole goal, is to get rid of them.
Right. All right. Well,
But
Lisa,
thank you so much.
Thank you. And everyone else watching, tune in next time and have a good day.